was against the law for almost everyone to go to the private island that Marlon Brando bought in 1967. There were strange shipwrecks in old ruins that were found after he died, along with hundreds of hidden recordings in which he talked about things he never told anyone else. He made these strange rules that are still in place on the island today, which was the most shocking thing he found out. A lot of famous people go to this getaway, but it has secrets that are so crazy you won't believe they're real. Brando was born on April 3rd, 1924 in Omaha, Nebraska. His early life was a mess. There was never anyone at home because his dad was a wandering salesman and was cold and distant. His son was often called sluggish and dumb, which Brando remembers for a long time. His mother, Dorothy Brando, was unique. She was lively and full of life. She was artistic and nice, but she drank too much. She often had to be taken home from clubs because she was too drunk to do it herself, leaving her kids for days at a time. When Brando was 11, his parents split up. The three of them went to California with their mom. They got back together and moved to Libertyville, Illinois. After 2 years, things didn't change. They were still mad at each other, and he didn't trust his mother. Brando was only able to get away by pretending to be someone else, playing tricks on people and changing his voice and face. It started out as a fun thing to do, but it quickly became more than that. He didn't like the school anyway, and this made it worse. Because of how close he was to his dad, nothing he did was ever good enough to make his dad like him. Brando stood up for his mother when his father yelled at her, and he did this a lot. He started to question rules instead of following them, which changed how he thought about power. For this, he was kicked out of Libertyville High School. He rode his motorbike through the halls. Some people said Brando's dad had enough and sent him to the Shatta Military Academy in Minnesota in 1939. He believed that harsh treatment would alter Brando, but it only made him less obedient. People knew him for pulling practical jokes, and one time he took the Brando found meaning in the school's theater program and learned from drama teacher Earl Duke Wagner that acting was more than just a way to pass the time. The school never found out where it went. He was kicked out of school in 1943 for breaking too many temporary rules, and students signed a petition to bring him back. Even though it was a way to talk about something deeper, it wasn't enough to keep him out of trouble. After hearing the news, Brando didn't wait to go out. He took the train to New York City instead of going back home, joined the theater workshop, and moved in with his sister. He learned to use his mind instead of just what he knew from his own life when Stella Adler taught him method acting. She also told him to read, listen to music, and think of other things to do. She taught Brando a lot, and he wanted to do more than just act. He wanted to change the way people thought about acting. His career took off when he played Stanley Kolsky in the movie Desire at the Ethel Barrymore Theater in New York City on December 3, 1947. The crowd couldn't find anyone better than him, even though he was only 24 years old. Tennessee Williams's play was already a big hit, but Brando made it stand out. Williams and director Elia Kazan saw something special in Brando. Stanley was meant to be played by an older man, but Brando added something new to the part by not just being a bad guy. His rage and anger didn't seem like something he practiced. They were real. It was impossible to deny that he was there. He didn't just act the part, he became it. To get ready for the role, Brando watched real-life fighter Rocky Graziano in a gym and copied how he stood, spoke, and moved. Later, when Graziano saw a streetcar, it scared him. Once the curtain went up, the gym jerk came out on stage and began to play me. Stella got a lot of attention for how badly Brando yelled, spoke, and danced during his show. A lot of reviewers said that Jessica Tandy should have won a Tony Award for her role as Blanche DuBose, but Brando became the show's spokesperson. Hollywood knew what was going on. His first movie was The Men, which was directed by Fred Zenon. Ken Willie Chicka, a war veteran who was trying to get used to his new life after becoming disabled, was played by him. Brando didn't just play the part, he lived it. While he was in a wheelchair for weeks, he watched hurt soldiers to learn about their pain, irritations, and everyday issues. It was one of the first Hollywood movies to show hurt soldiers coming back from battle. His show was said to be very moving and real. Elie Kazan directed a movie version of A Streetcar Named Desire in 1951. Stanley Kowalski played the lead role. When he did it on TV, it was much stronger than when it was live. The movie was nominated for 12 Oscars and won 4, including Best Actor for Vivi Lee Brando. Brando was also up for Best Acting for the first time, but he didn't win. No one else in Hollywood had ever been able to act like him. He had more success with Viva Zapata in 1952. For his part in Emiliano Zapata, the Mexican rebel, he was nominated for another Oscar. To get ready, he learned about the people in Zapata's neighborhood, how they spoke and how they lived. He played Mark Antony in. Many people didn't believe he could handle standard dialogue until he played Shakespeare in Julius Caesar in 1953. Then in 1954, On the Waterfront came out. It was called one of the best movies ever made about Antony by reviewers. Brando became famous for his role as Terry Malloy, a government worker who was torn between his morals and dishonest union leaders. His performance was honest, full of regret and pain. One of the most famous lines in movie history is, "I could have been a contender." The movie won 8 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, and Brando won Best Actor. Oh, he was more than just a movie star. In the middle of the 1950s, Brando was the biggest star of his time, and he changed the way people act for good. Marlon Brando was well known before The Wild One, but that movie made him a legend. The movie was based on a true story that took place in Hollister, California in 1947, when motorbike gangs caused trouble. John Strebler, the head of the Black Rebels Motorcycle Club, was played by Brando. He looked great in a leather jacket and a hat that was tilted. It didn't feel like he was playing, it felt real. What do you want to rebel against? In the movie, a woman asked, "What do you have?" To which he replied, it became a generation's voice. The movie was banned in Britain until 1968 because the government thought it encouraged teens to rebel. Sociologists even blamed it for a rise in teen crime. Brando's influence went beyond the screen. Elvis Presley's leather-clad look in Rebel Without a Cause and James Dean's role in the movie were both strongly influenced by him. After the movie, biker culture changed. Brando's winning Thunderbird motorbike came to represent freedom. Instead of just playing a rebel, Brando created a new standard for what an uprising should look like. But he never stuck to one role. In 1955, he shocked everyone when he co-starred with Frank Sinatra in the musical Guys and Dolls as the persistent gambler Sky Masterson. Brando's singing was a surprise, but he did it brilliantly. His version of Luck Be a Lady has elegance. It showed that he wasn't just intense and moody, he was also a comedian who could be funny or crazy. 2 years later, he played a very different role in Shannara, in which a Japanese dancer during the Korean War wins the heart of an American Air Force commander. In Hollywood, in the 1950s, romances were still seen as rude, but Brando didn't give up. His controlled and emotional performance showed a man torn between love and duty. The movie made $26.00, and made $3 million, 0 cents at the box office, making it a huge hit. Majamiko won 4 Academy Awards, including Best Supporting Actress. She was the first woman from East Asia to win an Oscar. Brando wasn't just a movie star, he was saying things. These performances showed his range. He was a rebel, a romantic lead, and even a singer. But his intense acting style made him hard to deal with. The 1962 movie Mutiny on the Bounty was the height of Brando's fame. It was supposed to be a remake of the 1935 classic and a great Hollywood epic, but it turned into one of the worst film projects ever. Brando was at odds with almost everyone. Sir Carol Reed, the film's first director, quit because of problems with Brando and the company. Brando's replacement, Louis Milestone, had no control over him. Brando wanted changes to the script and wouldn't say lines he didn't like. He often showed up late and would sometimes just stand still in front of the camera. Things got out of hand. The budget went up to more than $19 million, 0 cents, which was way over budget. Brando's co-stars were furious that MGM was about to go bankrupt. Richard Harris called him a nightmare to deal with. Milestone called the movie the mutiny of Marlon Brando. When it finally came out, it had beautiful sets and stunning cinematography, but critics weren't impressed. Many thought the 1935 original was better. Audiences were confused by Brando's performance as Fletcher Christian. He played him as soft-spoken and a little haughty instead of a strong hero. It was a risky choice that didn't work out the way he had planned. The Bounty Mutiny was a big change. Brando was still one of Hollywood's best actors, but the studios were growing. In the 1960s, Marlon Brando had lost his status as a box office star. His Hollywood image was falling apart, and his career had taken a terrible turn for the worse. He directed and starred in the 1961 movie Oni Jax, which made $4,300,000, 0 cents at the box office, $6 million, 0 cents more than planned. Brando was angry when Paramount Pictures finally took over the cutting process. The movie became famous and was added to the National Film Registry in 2018, but Brando didn't do another movie like it again. After directing a movie, Brando had trouble with his acting career as well. The Fugitive Kind, a 1960 movie based on a Tennessee Williams play, didn't do as well as people thought it would. He also had success with The Ugly American, 1963, Bedtime Story, 1964, Muratory, 1965, and The Appaloosa, 1966, but none of them were big hits. Even though Reflections in a Golden Eye, 1967, was a good piece of art, it wasn't enough to change his career. By 1968, Brando had quit acting completely, and his 3-year break showed that he had lost interest in Hollywood. During this time, he became more involved in civil rights activism. Brando was remembered even after he left Hollywood. He had a second chance with The Godfather in the early 1970s, but it wasn't easy to get the part. Paramount Pictures didn't want him because they thought he was unstable and too dangerous to cast. The film's director, Francis Ford Coppola, pushed for Brando to play Don Vito Corleone, and in the end, they agreed, but only after Brando took a screen test, agreed to a lower salary, and put up collateral in case he behaved badly. Brando's screen test became famous. The executives were shocked when he changed his voice, put cotton balls in his cheeks, and dyed his hair darker. Once filming started, Brando did things in his own unique way. Instead of memorizing lines, he used cue cards that were placed around the show for him to read. Robert Duvall, who played Tom Hagen, even had lines taped to his chest. This might have been hard for other performers, but it worked for Brando. His performance captivated the audience. The Godfather became a classic after it came out in 1972. Brando's portrayal of Don Corleone was praised by both critics and moviegoers. He won the 1973 Academy Award for Best Actor, but he chose to make history in a new way. People were shocked when Brando refused to accept the award. Some cheered, while others cheered that John Wayne allegedly needed to be stopped from violently assaulting Littlefeather backstage. Brando's objection brought attention to the Native American presence in Hollywood, but it also made him look like more of a troublemaker. Reports that questioned Littlefeather's Native American ancestry came out years later, causing controversy, but Brando's stand is still seen as one of the most famous events in Oscar history. In the meantime, Brando's career took off, and he became one of Hollywood's most prestigious actors again. Later that year, Bernardo Bertolucci's film Last Tango in Paris came out. Brando's next risky move was to play a passionate relationship between his character and a young woman played by Maria Schneider. The movie was controversial from the start because of its graphic content, but one scene became famous. Brando's character used butter as lubrication in a made-up physical encounter. Schneider then said that she wasn't told about this information before filming, and she felt helpless and ashamed. To get a more honest answer, Bertolucci admitted that he and Brando had planned it without telling her. This caused a lot of anger, especially during the Me Too movement later on, when people looked again at issues of consent in filmmaking. Even though there were scandals, Brando was nominated for another Academy Award. He had shown in The Godfather and Last Tango in Paris that he could still control the screen after years of failure. But Brando was unpredictable. Marlon Brando had been out of the public eye for years by the late 1970s. When he came back, he did it in a way that only he could, even though many people thought his career was over. He played Jor-El in Superman in 1978 and got an amazing $3,700,000, 0 cents right away. He also won 11 awards. Brando was paid over $19 million, 0 cents, for such a small role. He wouldn't learn his lines and had them shown off camera instead. He even said the Kryptonians should look like glowing bagels, which the studio quickly shot down. His unusual requests didn't affect the quality of his performance. His voice, demeanor, and mannerisms made Jor-El seem real. Superman went on to earn nearly $300 million, 0 cents, worldwide, showing that Brando could still have an effect on a movie's success, even with a small part. The next year, in Apocalypse Now, he had a much smaller part. He played Colonel Walter Kurtz, a rebellious U.S. Army soldier who was hiding out in the jungle of Cambodia. The production was already a mess, with setbacks, bad weather, and unplanned medical emergencies like actor Martin Sheen's heart attack. Things got even worse when Brando showed up on set. He wasn't ready, was overweight, and hadn't read the book that inspired Heart of Darkness. Kurtz's character had to be rewritten right away by director Francis Ford Coppola. Brando gave an unforgettable performance despite the chaos. He gave Kurtz an air of mystery that made him both interesting and dangerous. He worked for only 3 weeks and was paid $3,000, 0 cents. In the end, the movie made about $14 million, 0 cents. It made $8 million, 0 cents in theaters, and $150 million, 0 cents worldwide, making it one of the most acclaimed war movies ever. In Don Juan DeMarco, 1995, Brando played a different type of role. He was a psychiatrist named Dr. Jack Mickler, who helped a young man who thought he was the famous Don Juan. Johnny Depp played Don Juan. The movie had a lighter tone and mixed romance and humor with more serious themes of identity and love. Brando and Depp had great chemistry on screen, and it was a modest hit, making $68 million, 0 cents, worldwide. Brando was praised for giving his performance a sense of humor and warmth. His last major role was in the 2001 movie. Although Brando's commanding performance gave the crime thriller The Score an air of authority, things weren't always easy behind the scenes. Brando refused to follow director Frank Oz's instructions and got into a fight with him. Despite the stress on set, he insisted on speaking through Dyro instead. The Score went on to gross $113 million worldwide and received praise for its talented cast. Like his on-screen personas, Marlon Brando's real life was full of ups and downs. He was married 3 times, but none of them lasted. His first wife, Anna Siabai, was a Welsh and Indian actress. They had a child together named Christian, but their marriage was tainted by alcohol. After Kashi's drug problems caused a custody dispute after their marriage ended in 1959, Christian was taken by Kashi to a hippie commune in Baja, Mexico. Brando finally got full custody of Christian when he was 13 years old, but the damage had already been done. He later admitted that his child had become emotionally unstable. In 1960, he married actress Movida Castana, but their relationship was tense because she was 13 years older than him. To keep Brando from eating too much, Castana locked the fridge and ate the key. When Brando found out it was against the law, they ended their marriage. Castanova was married before, but she never officially divorced her first husband. In 1968, Brando fell in love with his Bounty co-star, Tarita Terrania, while they were still married. He was 38 years old, and she was a 19-year-old Tahitian actress. They had 2 children together, Simon and Cheyenne. Like all of his other marriages, this one ended in tragedy when Tarita found out that Brando was cheating on her, and their children kept her close to him even after they broke up. 8 years of an affair between Rita Moreno and Marlon Brando. It was one of the most passionate and destructive relationships Brando ever had. She was 22 and he was 30 when they met on the set of Desiree in 1954. She fell in love with him right away, but he cheated on her several times and had children with other women. She kept going back to him even after he did this, and she later admitted that she became addicted to the cycle of getting him back. Moreno dated Elvis Presley for a short time to make Brando jealous, but she thought he was dull compared to Brando. Her pregnancy with Brando's child was the turning point. He set up an illegal abortion, but she had to stay in the hospital afterward. It wasn't about retaliation, she later said. All she wanted was for the suffering to end. Even though they had a professional reunion the next day in 1968, their relationship ended soon after. Moreno hit Brando, letting out years of pent-up anger. In hindsight, she said Brando was her greatest passion, but their relationship almost ended her life. Brando's emotional problems didn't end with his relationships. Tragedies in his family would follow him for the rest of his life. His half-sister Cheyenne's lover, Dag Droll, was shot and killed by his brother-in-law. Brando's son Christian was killed in his Mulholland Drive home on May 16, 1990. Christian said he was standing up for Cheyenne because she had told him that Droll was mistreating her, but there were no signs of a fight before Christian was fired. Brando was devastated. He cried in court as he admitted he had failed as a father. Christian was given a 10-year prison sentence after pleading guilty to voluntary manslaughter. He was released after only 5 years of service. Cheyenne never fully recovered from the trauma. She had been dealing with mental health problems for years, but she had a severe depressive episode after Dritt's death. When she was deemed mentally incompetent, she lost custody of her son, Tukey. She killed herself by hanging herself in her mother's house in Tahiti on April 16, 1990. Idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis is a rare lung condition that gets worse over time. Marlon Brando died on July 1, 2004 at 6:30 p.m. at UCLA Medical Center in Los Angeles. He had respiratory failure. His health had gotten worse in his later years. He had type 2 diabetes and weighed more than 300 lb. Idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis was listed as the official cause of death on his death certificate, but not many people knew about it. Brando had become more private over time. He used to be larger than life, but now he lives alone almost all the time. His body was failing, but his mind stayed sharp. He worked on art projects when he could, and he even recorded voiceovers for an unfinished animated movie. His funeral was private, as he would have wanted, because he had been in the public eye for decades. Brando's voice could still be heard after he died thanks to the documentary Listen to Me, directed by Stephen Riley, which was made up of hundreds of hours of recordings he had made for himself. He was honest about how he felt about acting when he talked about his early years, his struggles with fame, and his tense relationship with his father. But when he was alone, he questioned the idea of film itself. He thought the idea of art in Hollywood was silly, and he didn't think there was a great film. He didn't like the industry that surrounded it, but he saw acting as a way to understand people. The documentary also looked at another side of Brando as an activist. He used his fame to fight for change. He famously turned down his Oscar for The Godfather in 1973 in order to support Native American activists in Little Feather. He didn't like how Hollywood portrayed Native Americans, and he wanted more than fame. On a small island in the South Pacific, far from Hollywood, Brando found Teddy Arrow, a remote paradise in French Polynesia. The beauty of the island and the way of life there enchanted him. He bought the island in 1967 with more than just a vacation in mind. It was a vision. He wanted to protect it so that something would last forever. Tentoria was more than just another tropical island. It was home to marine turtles, seabirds, plants, animals, and kilometers of coral reefs. Brando made sure that it would stay that way. Archaeological sites all over the island show that Polynesians lived and worked there long before Europeans did. Brando kept things simple. In 1970, he built a small town on Motuwant, one of Atau's islands, using only local materials like thatched roofs and coconut wood. He made sure that nothing would upset the delicate balance of the environment. The town had an airport, a dining hall, and homes, but nothing else. It became a private haven for him, his family, and environmental researchers. Tantoria also had secrets. In 1980, the Bermudan yacht Condor ran aground on its reef, leaving behind debris that stayed there for many years. Brando had planned to use some of the ship's parts for another project, but it never came together, like many of his other plans. Brando's death in 2004 didn't affect Teddy Ola. There were no tourists or visitors. Then, in 2014, a new chapter began. The Brando Resort was built when Pacific Beach Commerce was given the rights to build this luxurious resort, but it wasn't like any other. Brando's ideas were used to design it, and it had 35 private villas, French and Polynesian restaurants, and a spa tucked away in the island's natural setting. But the most important thing about it was that it cared about the environment, to protect sea turtle nesting sites. No overwater buildings were allowed. The resort limited access to protect the reef, and trash was thrown away carefully so as not to damage the ground. Teddy is still having problems. The island's fragile ecosystem is in danger from climate change, and efforts are still being made to protect it. But the island continues to represent Brando's values. He had lived his whole life defying expectations and refusing to let Hollywood critics or even his own history define him. In the end, his biggest contribution went beyond the screen. It was clear in the way he lived, the causes he supported, and the legacy he left behind. It holds the dream of a man who never stopped wondering about the world.